Well, hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stu Wetstein, and welcome back to the Job Interview Mastery Training course. We've now reached Module 4, Red Flags and Practice. Now, these terms might not sound like they have anything to do with each other, but I promise we get into the training, you're going to see they do. What is a red flag? If you are actively out job interviewing, or if you're in the human resources profession, or you've worked with a recruiter, you probably know this term. In a very general sense, it's something about your career history that gives cause for concern, or for our NFL fans out there, for further review. Something that makes a recruiter, an HR professional, a hiring manager, the head of a company, whatever, look at a resume or look at the notes about a candidate and say, I have a question about this. And we'll talk about all different types about them, but I think about the end, right? I think about the outcome. That's where I try to work from. I want you to get a job offer. And I start working backwards. What are the steps? What are the hurdles? What are the things that are going to potentially get in the way? Or do we at least have to address? So there are different types of red flags, as you might imagine. And by the way, let me just make a quick note. If you are not watching this in the United States, the red flag reference may not be as relevant. I've found when I've worked internationally that it is much more synonymous with the U.S., where we think of red flags, it's associated with hurricanes, natural disaster in the United States. Outside the U.S., it's just a flag, and I get it. But what it is for us in the hiring process, it's something that can get in the way. And there are different types. There are those that are significant. The biggest ones, of course, are about your career progression. Why did you leave a specific job? I'm looking on the resume and it says Stu was only at this position for 6 months. Or it looks like he was at a place for 10 years, but then he went to another place and he was only there for a year and a half, and then he went back to the place that he was at for 10 years. Those are the types of things that give cause for questioning or concern, or anything that will potentially get in the way of the company thinking that you're the best candidate for the job. Obviously, another one that comes up these days are gaps in employment. Gaps in employment used to be something that was automatically a disqualifier, but this is where the economic sort of upheaval kind of works to everybody's advantage. Too many people have been affected. Too many industries have gone away. So gaps in employment, or a couple of different jobs with short stints because of some major outcome or major thing that went on in your career, that's explainable these days. This isn't an automatic disqualifier, but it is one of those things that has to come up, and you have to be able to explain it. Let's talk about a couple others, and we're going to touch on that gap in employment thing many times. Leadership. If you've been in a leadership position, if you're a manager, a director, or any kind of executive, do the things on your resume, do the things in your background, give any cause for concern. Did you have one role and then move to a more senior role, and then because of something that was unforeseen, have to take a step back, have to have a change in title? I've been in part of so many conversations where hiring managers will look at a resume and say, well, I'm looking at Stu's resume here and I see, he was a manager here and then he became a director. Now he's over at this place as like a senior product manager. Why would he make that move? Why would he make that kind of decision? And why I talk about all of these things is there are things that get in the way of you getting in the conversation. Of course, it could be explained. Gap in employment, a couple of different jobs. Look, if you're like in the advertising profession, short stints usually mean upward mobility. That can be a good thing on your resume. It's all about the perspective. Other things that come up, ethics and integrity, right? That's anything that looks like it could be a cause for concern on that category is usually a disqualifier. So why I put this up here is it's one of those ones we want to get out in front of. We want to think about that as we're doing our marketing, as we're sending our cover letters, and obviously as we get into those first conversations, if we're going to have to explain them. There are those that are not nearly as significant as red flags. I put things like experience and education, or did you go to the right school? Do you have an advanced enough degree? But so many candidates through the past few years have said, well, this position says MBA required or MBA preferred, so should I even apply? And I say, you know what? It's listed there as a reason so people will disqualify themselves. That doesn't mean you can't apply for the job. What do you have to lose? And an MBA or any kind of advanced degree, if it's specifically related to the skill, if it's specifically related to the job, of course, then you need to have it. I'm not trying to knock higher education. What I'm saying is a lot of times it's listed mainly as a disqualifier, and also just to see, will you bring in higher level candidates by listing MBA preferred? Will you bring in candidates who have a little bit more experience? But it's not an automatic. Location. Work with so many candidates who are sales professionals that territory comes up in conversation. Are they too far outside of a territory? Are they next to a territory where we have someone who's been in the position for a really long time, will there be some conflict? Location is one of those that easily can be addressed in a conversation. So I always list these as the not so significant type of red flags. There's still those ones that cause further review, but it's one of those after further review, usually typically move on. All right, let's talk a little bit more. Transparency, perspective, and action. So in a perfect world, and I would love to believe we always live in a perfect world, and most of the time we do, but in interviewing, not always the case. In a perfect world, the company would see something of any area of concern, any red flag, and you know what they do? They'd pick up the phone and they'd say, Stu, we see that you were at this company for only 9 months. Why? However, that doesn't happen now. There are so many applications coming in, especially for any of the posted jobs. There are plenty of candidates out there who are playing a little bit of offense and introducing themselves to companies, so you have a lot to compete with. It is too easy for companies to look at something that may potentially sound like a red flag and just move on. So what do? As the recruiter, I address them up front, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to bring it up. I don't in any way want you to think you have to apologize for your background or apologize for your career decisions. It's not coming from a position of weakness. What it is addressing the concern ahead of time by anticipating the questions. If it's something significant, if it's, you're in a sales position and people typically in your profession may have, non-compete clauses or contracts, or there's, conflict of interest, or you can't work in the same industry for a year, any of those type of things. Bring that up. Make sure that in your cover letter, in your first conversation with the internal recruiter, whatever it is, that you mention that in advance. Hey, by the way, I just want to let you know, I don't have any non-compete issues, contract clear, I can work, I'm eligible for employment, whatever those types of things are. By addressing them up front, you allow people to at least continue the conversation. And obviously the not so important ones, incorporate them into your strategy. If you're trying to move from one industry into another, a lot of us have had to do that in the last few years. If you're reinventing yourself, you can anticipate that they're going to look at your experience and say, okay, 8 years of experience here, Stu, it's all in recruiting, but now you say you want to be in marketing. Like, I don't see the dots connecting. You can anticipate that. You can put that in your cover letter. You can leave that in the first voicemail. Hey, I know I'm making a jump. That's why I need 5 minutes of your time. I've thought about this. I have a strategy. Let me tell you how recruiting is just like marketing. Let me tell you about marketing candidates. I can go on and on with the examples, but by anticipating them, you incorporate them into your game. Let's talk about the last point. I think we can all learn from celebrities and from the media that pretty much anything on this earth, within reason, can be explained if you do what? If you find a way to talk about it positively and you get out in front of it. It's all about your perspective. Anything else, any of these, even ones that don't seem that significant, if things come up later on, either end up being a disqualifier or they stop you from getting far enough in the process before you have anything that you can do about it, before that you get to offer an explanation. Obviously, if we're always sitting at the table, then it's no problem. Then we're going through the resume, we're going bullet by bullet. We're able to talk about that. We're able to talk in detail about why you made a decision, why you moved from this industry to this industry, why you were willing to relocate, why you had to move back, why you were the one who was laid off. Whatever those things are, anticipate them. Incorporate them into your strategy, incorporate them into your answers. We're going to talk about this when we get into the further sections about how you incorporate this on interview day. It's not something I want you to lead with. It's not, if you have a gap of employment, that is the first thing out of your mouth at the beginning of an interview. Hey, you're looking at my resume, Stu, and I bet you're wondering why I haven't worked in a year. Don't start that way. But by getting out in front of it, by incorporating it, you cut those questions off at the beginning or before they even come up. Someone looks at it and goes, oh, okay, I see. He's saying he recognizes that he's making a shift in industries, but oh, look, he's outlined this. All right, well, let's bring him in for a first interview. All of these strategies, again, these are not things that are going to get you an offer all by itself. That would be awesome. These are what gets you into the process. So we're going to be moving on to part 2, where we're going to talk about how to practice these. But as far as red flags, take a look at your resume. If you have an opportunity that you're applying specifically for, anticipate the questions. Anticipate, you as the HR professional, you as the hiring manager, what questions would you ask based on that job description or that company and your resume? Those are the things that you can anticipate, hit them off in the, at the beginning. All right, so we're going to move on here in just a moment. We're going to get into practicing. And until then, get out there, interview with passion, all right?